So, okay, we're here to talk about your short film, Shelly's Leg.
Yes.
It's always fun hearing about Seattle history, and this is very much a very impactful part of Seattle's history, especially among the LGBTQ community here. So let's talk about it. What made you decide to make this short film on this particular story?
Yeah, so I read, I'm also really interested in Seattle history and especially gay history in general. And there's an amazing book called Gay Seattle by Gary Atkins. He was a professor at SU. It came out, like, I think in the late 90s. So I read it around the time that I was making Potato, and it's an amazing book. It reads like a thriller, even though it's a historical book, and he's a historian. Like, it's just so dynamic, and so he pulls a lot of quotes by the people from that time, so it really reads like a thriller. And different chapters talk about different eras in Seattle as far as gay history, and one chapter is 70s, and it's Shelly's Leg. And I just absolutely, I fell in love with the whole book, but that story was just so wild and unbelievable and bizarre, and just like every aspect of it was so crazy, and I just really love, you know, stranger than fiction, true life stories, and that was one. So I met with Gary, the author. We talked, you know, he sort of gave me some pointers on, you know, where to do additional research. And I spent almost 3 years researching it. I spoke to like over 100 people who were somehow involved. And it turned into this really interesting, fun challenge because it's a great story, obviously, but the people who went to Shelly's Leg were generally very high on drugs.
The short does allude to the extracurriculars that people participated in.
So even though I spoke to over 100 people, what became sort of the standard conversation, I would say 95% of the conversations were like, oh my God, Shelly's Leg was the best. Like, there's nothing like Shelly's Leg. Shelly's Leg, the best time of my life. I have never like had this much fun. It was the best club ever. I was like, okay, is there some like episode that you remember? Oh, I was so high, I don't remember anything. I was like, okay, this is not, okay, say anything you remember? No.
Oh boy, that must have made research a little tricky.
And of course, sadly, you know, majority of gay men from that era have passed away from AIDS. So that's a huge chunk of, you know, people involved with the club have passed away that way, and people who are still around, you know, a lot of them are in their 70s, 80s. So in addition to drugs, you know, they just, it was really hard to kind of pull any more information than was already available, but I think I did a good job of like getting some things that I haven't read anywhere else. But in terms of visuals, it turned into a huge challenge because there's very few photos.
I was absolutely going to ask about this because the interviews that happen in the short are verbatim recreations, and so that must have been a very interesting challenge to approach as you went into like visually crafting this movie.
Yeah, so I realized like there's no visuals. The interviews that exist are like press interviews. There's also an amazing archive of like oral gay history at UW. That you know, like anybody can try to access. And in terms of video, I have not been able to find any film of either the main characters in the story or the club itself.
Oh yeah, because we're talking about the 70s at this point. We weren't all walking
Yeah,
around
and
with
of
cell
course,
phones,
you know,
right?
I mean, first of all, people weren't carrying around cameras back then. Secondly, it is a gay club, even though it was an extremely open and, you know, not a discreet environment for the time. It was still a gay, like, I don't think people would look kindly upon somebody coming in with a camera. So what I decided at that time is, I would recreate all the interviews with actors and make it look like a documentary. It was actually made soon after the maybe like early 80s was in my mind. Like this is when this movie was made. It was like almost like a found a movie from that era. So that became a really fun challenge for me because I prefer fictional filmmaking to documentary. Like it's just more fun to me. So constructing that world and like finding the right cast, finding the right like costumes, everything was really, really fun.
How long did it take you? So I know you did 3 years of research. How long did it take you to actually like film the short, get all the footage, and maybe even talk about the editing process?
Yeah, I think in terms of filming, like we shot maybe over a year. I mean, if you combine it all, it was maybe 5 days of shooting. It was just a matter of like, we were looking for certain things. So for example, it took me a while to I found the actual original fire engine that carried the cannon that blew Shelly's leg off.
Wow.
So I found, and the guy was Charles. He's a former police chief, and he's amazing, very generous. But then I still needed to find a cannon, so it took me forever to find a cannon. So it just like, it took time to film certain things just because just figuring out how we get them. And so yeah, I would say about a year of kind of random weekends here and there. And then editing took, I don't know, maybe 6 months.
Nice.
Or so. I had a strong outline. Like I had basically a script, which is kind of I guess that's one advantage of working with something that happened long ago. Because, if you work on a documentary that's contemporary, something that's happening right now, the huge challenge that I've experienced it's just like it can go so many places, and that editing process, exploration process, it can just like take you on years of aimless wandering, which is why like another reason that I find documentaries very kind of don't love doing that. But because something happened like really long time ago, you have the privilege to like basically write out a script because I know what chunks of interviews I have, I know what story I have. I did try to keep looking for more and more, and that's why the project did get stretched out beyond what I was hoping for. Because initially I was like, I don't have money for a feature. I just want to make something quick. And then it became like a 3-year project.
Quote unquote quick.
Quick, yeah.
In the film industry. That's really funny. You make a valid point about documentaries. It blows my mind every time I talk with a documentarian, like the uncertainty in like these unfolding stories or situations or whatever they're documenting.
Yeah.
And you just don't know where the end is, and you just follow the story until whenever. So like I could not imagine taking on that kind of challenge. And I think that this is a really great middle ground where you can tell a story that is based in reality, but it's history and it's educational. Which I think is what I appreciated most about this documentary is just how insightful it was about this particular era and this particular club. I'm interested in what you found most valuable from what you learned about this chapter in Seattle history or about this club. Like, what was the most insightful thing that you got out of making this movie?
Gosh, I think, well, insightful, I don't know if it's insightful necessary. We're going through this interesting thing right now. I mean, we're kind of at the end of it almost, I think, as a gay community, where the acceptance that we got is wonderful. But it really eliminates, in a way, spaces in the community that we have. And that's a good problem to have. I think the older generation would much prefer being treated like full human beings versus like having their own bar. But it is kind of a sad thing, especially for like generations like mine that kind of straddles both worlds. Like, you miss those spaces. And Shelly's leg, even though it happened over, 40 years ago, it is the same kind of story of like this burst of like fun kind of community space that is so wonderful and magical, and people are just having the time of their life, and then it just like goes up in flames.
Literally,
and then it
up in
fizzles
flames,
out,
right?
like, and then it reopens and fizzles out. And so it's almost like it's an old story, but it almost like in that way speaks to today, I think. And like, yeah, just kind of impermanence of spaces. And I've experienced it in other ways too, because like I used to work very closely with like the neo burlesque community, and I saw that sort of be this incredible moment, and then it just all kind of, and I think it just happened, you know, it's just like change is inevitable in life. But there's a kind of a sadness around it, right?
Yeah. I think one of the things that struck me, again, this whole short was very educational about this history. One of the things that struck me though, and maybe this goes into like how you scripted or laid out the format of this short, is learning about Shelly. It's interesting because when you start the documentary, she's almost kind of a hero, where she's like helping put this together. We name it after her missing leg. It's kind of funny, and then you learn this like glorious history of this nightclub. And then we find out Shelly was kind of a diva. Shelly was a little extra sometimes.
Yeah.
Talk to me about working that into the story and finding that dynamic of like revering what Shelly did, but also recognizing that she was a person.
Yeah. I think diva is a very kind word. Very generous. Yeah, I mean, that kind of became obvious really early on as I started to speak to people or even look at interviews that already existed. Like, unfortunately, nobody... I mean, people did acknowledge, like, oh my God, she did this amazing thing. Everybody acknowledged that. Like, everybody was grateful for that. Everybody acknowledged that what she went through was just so horrific, and she had amazing sense of humor about it, and sort of embraced it and made something beautiful about it. So that's like the magical part of her. But also nobody, everybody had something terrible to say about her. Like every conversation kind of went downhill eventually. Like, but she was actually a monster, and then we stopped being friends. So, I just realized that's like part of her. I find it so fun and like real, like, and I, speaking to some people, like there were people who were like, oh, you're not making her look like great, or it's a little too negative. And I'm like, I kind of love it. Like she's we live in this stupid kind of cancel culture days where it's like black and white, and it's like, well, a person can be terrible 90% of the time, then do something amazing. Like it's like we're very complicated and messy, and I don't want to shy away from either side. Like she did something beautiful. She was also impossible to be around. Like they're not exclusionary. Like those things happen in real life all the time. So I think that makes her more interesting. But yeah, I mean, I was aware, like, this is why a lot of the interviews didn't even make it in the film, because it's like a lot of it was kind of repetitive, in terms of, like, yeah, she was so harsh. I was like, well, I will cover how harsh she is, but like, I'm not gonna have 30 minutes of people just talking about what a bitch she is. It will just get very old.
I mean, it's so interesting. I know you want to move on to horror and make a horror film, and I'm looking forward to that. But I don't know, maybe sometime in your future we can make a narrative on this particular story and embody the greatness and the messiness of Shelly and this whole piece of history in Seattle.
Yeah, I have thought about it. I've thought about maybe combining her story with like other stories from that time, and doing something that's sort of the overlapping characters of that era, because it was a really interesting era. I mean, Seattle has such a crazy history and so weird. Seattle's always been weird, and like I just recently learned that the phrase Skid Row comes from Seattle.
Oh, is that true?
Yeah, and
I believe it.
It's basically Yesler Hill. They would just push the lumber down and it would roll down. And everybody around Yesler were like, who lived around Yesler were like, they were called seamstresses. They were prostitutes. So we became really famous.
That tracks. That makes sense. Yeah. No, very cool. I'm not sure. Have you had the screening of the shorts program already?
We did.
Okay.
Thursday.
Yeah. How was the reaction? How was people's response?
It was
to the film?
I think people responded really well. The people that I was worried the most were like the people that are. There's a couple of people that are still alive that are in the film. So they seem to really love it. So that's. I cared about that the most because I was like, oh my God, somebody's playing you in the movie, and just the fact that they were there, right? Like I'm telling the story that they actually experienced.
Right.
But.
Yeah, very cool. Well, I congratulate you on this film and getting it out there and having it screened here at SIFF. And I've said before, I'm always looking forward to things that you do and you work on, and that continues to be true. I'll keep an eye out for
everything. So thanks,
Wes.